our speaker. Hope has been a part of the Redeemer community since she was 8 years old. After almost 10 years of Paul's Place Camp, 6 years in Redeemer's youth group, and 3 years as a Sunday school teacher, she grew to love the opportunities for community engagement that Redeemer provided. After falling in love with geology and sustainability in college, she returned to Baltimore and worked briefly as an environmental educator at the Irvine Nature Center and an outreach coordinator at Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake. While back in town, she rejoined the youth group, but this time as an adult volunteer. A year ago, almost to the day, Hope moved and started a job in corporate sustainability consulting in Falls Church, Virginia, and that's where she's broadcasting from this evening, where she works with public and private sector clients to design, execute, and manage programs that improve the environmental performance of building portfolios. So it's my honor to introduce to you Hope Duke.
Thanks so much, David. I'm really happy to be here tonight and be a part of this speaker series that Redeemer is doing. I was a little bit sad to actually leave Redeemer when the parking lot project was breaking ground and was underway, because I was very excited about that. And the organization that I worked with previously, Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake, I know they've been involved with Redeemer for a few years now and helping secure some of that funding that has made some of those projects possible. So it was really nice to kind of come full circle in my involvement with Redeemer. So I'm excited to be with you all tonight. And I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker tonight. Michelle Anderson from Blue Water Baltimore is the Senior Manager of Eco-Literacy and Engagement. Michelle develops and oversees Blue Water Baltimore's engagement and eco-literacy programs that are designed to nurture and grow people's understanding of our connection to water and waterways. He makes learning about scientific data and restoration practices more easily digestible and fun. He holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Visual Art from University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and a Master's of Education in Nature-Based and Sustainability Education from Antioch University, New England. Michelle spends his free time meandering in wild places as opposed to hiking, practicing guitar and magic, and writing. He is also a board member of Aerofans, the Eastern Regional Association of Forest and Nature Schools. Fun fact, Michelle lived in Hanoi, Vietnam for 2 years, and he still uses chopsticks daily and believes they are way better than the vastly inferior fork. And with Michelle tonight, we also have Mary Lewis from Blue Water Baltimore, and she works in the nursery there. So Michelle and Mary, welcome, and we're excited to learn from you all this evening.
Hello, well, thank you very much for having us. So the way we'll do this is I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and this presentation kind of goes through a really good overview of Blue Water Baltimore. So I'm just going to kind of jump right in. And you'll see that we'll have sort of a preview of what we will do. Let me get this screen share going. Okay. And is it full screen for you all now? I only have a few people as reps. I see Lee Kelly. Yes.
No, it's good. It's full screen.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And you're there too, Mary. I forgot. I'm going to close my window so I don't have to look at my face. All right. So let me pull this up over here. All right. I think we're ready to go. So as you can see at the bottom, I turned on a closed captioning feature on PowerPoint. I don't know how well it'll work. This is the first time I'm using it. So hopefully, well, we'll just see how it goes. So again, thanks for having me. This talk is called A History of Our Most Precious Resource, Watershed Ecology in the Anthropocene. So this will be our agenda. So I'll go over who Blue Water Baltimore is. I'll define a few key terms. I'll go over the natural history of water, and then we'll get into the Baltimore Urban's water cycle. We'll talk about solutions and opportunities, and then there'll be time for Q&A. At the same time, if you have questions, feel free to just type them into the chat window. Mary is going to be sifting through those. If you have a question that, I said something and it doesn't make sense, just maybe put it in all caps so Mary can see it. But then afterwards, what Mary will do is kind of coalesce some of the questions that come in into the primary, a lot of the times it's very similar questions that come. But then there'll also just be kind of free form time afterwards to just ask questions as well. So with that, I'm going to dive in. So I'm not just a talking head here. My name is Michelle, and I'm the Eco Literacy and Engagement Senior Manager at Blue Water Baltimore. So I've been at Blue Water for almost 5 years at this point. I've had a lot of experience in sustainable outdoor living and permaculture. I've lived internationally and taught in Vietnam for a couple of years. Before Vietnam, I was at the Waldorf School of Baltimore, where I designed a nature study course and forest aftercare program. And that happens to be when, around the time I met Martha, we were in a permaculture class together, actually. I studied art and photography at University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and I have a master's degree in sustainability and nature-based education from Antioch. And I am the caretaker of an adorable dog named Bela, a cute fact that I'm sharing with you to establish trust and perhaps to strike a bit of primal fear in you as well. So Blue Water Baltimore's mission is to restore the quality of Baltimore's rivers, streams, and harbor, and foster a healthy and, oh, wait a minute. Yes, okay, sensitive screen. Streams and harbor and foster a healthy environment, strong economy, and thriving communities. We're part of the International Waterkeeper Alliance, and basically we're your local environmental organization focused on cleaning the waterways of Baltimore City and County. We're a pretty lean, mean water pollution fighting machine weighing in at 16 people. Blue Water Baltimore collectively has experience in water quality analysis, native plants and trees, green stormwater infrastructure, advocacy, environmental education, and we even have a boat. This boat right here in this corner, well, one that actually works. But this point is to just, this image is to show you how Blue Water Baltimore works. So we aim for source point or upstream solutions, the stuff in the middle of this picture and higher, to address health issues regarding water. Things like rain gardens, storm drain art, advocacy and policy work, tree planting, and education. An example of a downstream solution is Mr. Trash Wheel. And though we love Mr. Trash Wheel like everybody does, he is collecting trash that shouldn't be there in the first place. So Mr. Trash Wheel would be considered a downstream solution, and a campaign to end littering and to starve Mr. Trash Wheel would be considered an upstream solution. Okay, so now we're going to go over some terms to orient you in space and time, which may or may not be new words to you. So what is a watershed? A watershed is an entire land area that drains into a common body of water. So a watershed's boundaries are defined by the high points of a landscape. So think of a double basin kitchen sink. When water falls in one side, it's in one watershed. When it falls in another, it's in a different watershed. But as the water travels down out of the smaller watersheds, down the drain, they ultimately go into a shared larger watershed. Blue Water Baltimore works in primarily 4 watersheds: the Gwens Falls, the Jones Falls, the Herring Run, and the Direct Harbor. We also do a little bit of work in the Patapsco watershed as well. All those together, those 4 watersheds together make up 194 square miles. There's 454 river miles, and there's 1 million residents within that. Wherever you are on Earth, you stand on a watershed, and all of Baltimore's local watersheds are part of a larger one that drain into the Chesapeake Bay. Okay. So that defined where we are in space. Now I'm going to define where we are in time. So Earth scientists use a geological timeline to timestamp the events that have occurred on Earth since its inception 4.6 billion years ago. On the timeline, time is subdivided into categories that correspond with large events, eons being the longest and epochs being the shortest. But by the shortest, I'm talking about 1 million years, so short is relative. So for example, dinosaurs were around 100 million years ago in the Mesozoic era. The Anthropocene is the proposed current epoch that we are living in, but it has not yet been it's not yet a formally defined geological unit of time, and it might not become one. There's a lot of talk about that term, but I'll leave that for you to explore. Formerly, we were in the Holocene. Oh no, formerly we are in the Holocene, which started 12,000 years ago and encompasses the dawn of early civilization. Now, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty about this, but consider the Anthropocene as the time humans started to alter the ecosystem of Earth on a massive scale. It's usually said to have begun about 250 years ago, the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, and I'll talk more about examples of that pivotal moment later. So now that we're oriented in time and space, I'm going to walk through the natural history of water and share some ideas as to where water originated and how it got to Earth. And as a caveat, I'm an educator by profession, not a scientist, so my goal is to give you a very broad understanding of this topic. So we're going to start at the beginning, and I mean the very beginning. So when I Googled our origin story, this is what came up. I don't know what that says about us, but I'm not going to make any bold statements. But after sorting through a few hundred images of these, I finally found this one. So the Big Bang was about 14 billion years ago. Within seconds, the first simple elements formed: hydrogen, helium, and lithium, which under great pressure and fusion formed the first stars 200 million years later. The elements of life, oxygen and carbon, came about during those explosions of the first massive stars about 4 million years after that. Fairly immediately, oxygen fused with hydrogen and water was born. Our solar system was born about 9 billion years after that, making our tiny corner of the universe 5 billion years old. Now, there's a lot of theories about how water came to Earth. For decades, the prevailing one was that water-bearing comets struck the surface of a dry planet, creating oceans. And another theory, and this one is only from 2016, suggests that cosmic water was a central ingredient in the formation of our solar system, and Earth formed covered in water. But the truth is, we don't actually know. This needs to advance there. Okay. Sorry. Okay, the Big Bang is our culture's scientifically informed origin story, but there are many cultural myths and stories that also talk about how water ended up on Earth. So according to the Iroquois Native Americans, water was already on Earth, much like the new theory. And when a sky woman fell from her home, sea animals caught her, dove to the bottom of the sea brought up mud, and they spread that mud on the back of a large turtle, and there it began to grow until it became North America, which really is just as plausible as what I just laid out. But let's face it, either origin story is strange and has vast implications. So one of America's greatest cosmologists, Carl Sagan, said, "The nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, the carbon in our apple pies were made of the interiors of collapsing stars. We are made of star stuff." And I say that, but let's not get too high and mighty about it. But seriously, despite how it got here, the fact that our planet is covered with clean primordial water is what allows us to live here. So now that we have some idea as to how water came to Earth, I'm going to share a few slides that discuss how it moves through the Earth, which this might bring you back to your 3rd grade Earth Science class, and you can thank me for that later. So this is a very basic image of the natural water cycle. Basically, liquid water evaporates from the Earth's surface, travels in the air as a gas, condenses on dust particles, then falls to Earth as rain or snow, and then evaporates again. Water changes from a solid to a liquid to a gas in a never-ending cycle that is far more chaotic and mesmerizing than this graphic illustrates. Though there are disagreements on how water got here, we are confident that the water on Earth today has been here cycling around for millions of years. With your every interaction with it, try to remain aware that water is cosmic and ancient. You're drinking the same water that dinosaurs drank. And that's weird. And that's not the only thing that's weird about water. Water is the only substance that exists in the temperate zones of the planet as a solid, a liquid, and a gas. It can defy gravity through capillary action, which is how treetops remain hydrated. Snowflakes are magically weird fractal objects of which no two are alike. And surface tension is the property that allows water to resist an external force. Excuse me one moment. Of course, we are water, or at least 72% of our bodies are anyway. The bodies of animals are similar. and plants are 95% water. So if water is weird and you are water, we are weird. Case in point, every winter, my colleagues jump into the freezy Patapsco River to raise money for Blue Water Baltimore. So if you would please consider making a donation, I can tell them that they no longer need to do that. All right, so now that we have some ideas as to how and where water came from and its weird properties, now I'll share some examples of the relationship humans have had with water throughout history. Our ancestors have been around for 6 million years and modern humans for only 200,000 years. We started out in clans of hunter and gatherers and followed the water. Living near water was essential to our survival. And as you know, we can survive for close to 3 weeks without food, but only 3 days a week at most without water. Naturally, the first stationary human settlements cropped up near water. And during this time, we started managing water through irrigation practices. As we further complexified our culture, so did we complexify our water harvesting systems. For example, this is a picture of the Roman aqueduct. The Romans' water system most closely resembles our modern one, though we've enclosed it and added treatment plants and pressurization. Throughout our history, we took to the common sense practice of harvesting our water upstream and sending our waste and poop downstream. And pooping has always posed a problem for us, especially when we started crowding into cities. Aside from disposing it into streams during the Middle Ages, chamber pots were used, which were dumped into open sewers and cesspools. And later, night soil night soil collection was common, where nightmen collected our poop and hauled it out of the city to compost. In fact, I've read that that is exactly how Baltimore dealt with some of its waste in the past. But as you can imagine, this caused a lot of problems. And eventually, this guy, I'm just kidding, no wait, I'm not, this guy, Sir Thomas Crapper of London, refined the flush toilet in 1861, making it similar to the one we use today. Actually, the flush toilet was invented a couple centuries beforehand, but it was Crapper's Crapper that was the first one to be widely available. The widespread use of the flush toilet began to place heavy demands on the rapidly urbanizing environments and freshly budding wastewater systems, which at the time were made out of hollowed out logs. Okay, so I gave you a few examples of how humans have used water over history. Now I'm going to talk about these little dudes. So nature's hydrologists, beavers. Other than humans, no other mammal does more to shape and change the landscape to suit their needs. Before we started altering waterways, beavers have been doing it for much longer. And I mean much, much longer. This giant beaver went extinct 10,000 years ago, but as you can see, it was well over 8 feet long. Big or small, you know what busy beavers do. They build dams. And with dams come wetlands, and with wetlands comes biodiversity and complexity. Throughout history, beavers' dams maintained a checkered board of rich meadows across the land. Beavers are a keystone species. For every dam, wetlands are created, providing home and food for dozens of other species. Before the arrival of the Europeans, it was estimated that there were over 200 million beavers in America. And to put that into context, currently there are about 240 million adults alive today in the United States. And those beavers maintained innumerable dams and ecosystems across all the waterways. Today, there are less than 12 million beavers left. What happened? And to understand that, we have to go back to medieval times. Again, that's the Google search issue I talked about earlier. So the homes of people living in Europe during the Middle Ages did not have the climate control capabilities that we enjoy today. And beaver fur is extremely expensive and dense, is extremely dense, more so than other animals, making it very warm, and it's waterproof and expensive. And it was sought after by royal families with reckless abandon, stockpiling obscene amounts of beavers' hats and coats. The homes of people living in Europe during the Middle Ages, Additionally, beavers' bodies were extremely useful for a number of other reasons. Beaver meat was considered a delicacy, and as a fun fact, a strange fact, Due to their squared tail, their scaled tails, beavers were classified as aquatic creatures and could be eaten during Lent by the people that could afford them. Beavers also produce an oil called castoreum, which was used for medicines and perfume, and which apparently is still used today because I got that picture off of an Etsy shop. So there were endless demands for dead beavers, and by the 1400s, the European beaver trade started to dry up, and by the mid 1500s, they were practically wiped out. And this is just a fun Baltimore tip. That illustration at the top is the Crucifixion by artist Albert Dier, and it is at the BMA, so go check it out. When the Europeans arrived in America, they found a land of 200 million coats and hats. At this time, the intercontinental fur trade began. In fact, the sale and trade of beaver skins was how Native Americans were first introduced to the Western concepts of commerce. By 1700, beaver populations were exterminated off America's East Coast, and by the 1800s, they went practically extinct. Tribes got their trade goods, traders got rich, Europeans got their hats and coats, and the world lost nature's hydrologist. We call beavers keystone species because without them, all the ecosystems that they support decline as well. So over time, the ecosystems associated with the beaver's built environments disappeared. The decline of the beaver marks the first time humans had altered the Earth's water cycle on a massive scale. And over time, we've built our own dams for our own dam reasons. In 2003, the shift in mass caused by the filling of the Three Gorges Dam in China, which is a half a mile long, the world's largest hydroelectric power station, actually changed the tilt of the Earth on its axis by 2 centimeters. I'm not going to get into the nit of that, but that is just a overwhelming concept over the fact that we did that. So our attempted dominance over water has ultimately provided us with an illusionary sense of abundance. However, though Earth is 70% water, only 2.5 of that water is drinkable fresh water, and only 1% of that is easily accessible. Okay, so that was an extremely simplified overview of a very complex topic, but I hope it gave you some sense of how important water is and how interesting our relationship with it continues to be. I've been talking about water on a global, or actually intergalactic level, but now I'm going to bring it home to Baltimore and talk about how water moves through our urban landscape. So once upon a time, Baltimore City did not have a publicly owned wastewater system. We utilized the night soil system I mentioned earlier. That, or affluent citizens, had to privately set up piping systems that carried waste to rivers, and they did so out of those hollowed out trees. Our current water system was put into place after the Great Fire of Baltimore in 1904. After the fire, this is the system that was put in place. Ceramic pipes replaced the log ones. We installed a state-of-the-art system that separated sewage and stormwater. This was a point of pride for Baltimore residents, as our system was considered an engineering marvel at the time, and the Baltimore Sun even reported that it rivaled the sewers of Paris, which is pretty awesome. But remember, those pipes were installed in the 1920s, close to 100 years ago. And at that time, the life expectancy of those pipes was 70 years, known to be 70 years. And we have now surpassed that by over 25. So just to kind of get into how these work, to make use of gravity, storm drains and sewers run alongside natural streams, valleys. Storm drains are designed to convey runoff to streams. Sewers are designed to take sewage to treatment plants. It's important to understand that storm drain pipes are actually channeled streams. As these pipes age, they develop cracks and breaks, especially in the pipe junction areas. And since the storm and sewer lines are laid right next to each other, these cracks and sewage mix with the water in the storm drain lines and vice versa, which means raw sewage, untreated sewage enters into our streams. And there are serious costs affiliated with failing infrastructure. Both of these sinkholes cost Baltimore City close to $7 million to fix. And just to get a good understanding, if we were to combine Charm City's storm and wastewater pipes, there are over 4,000 miles of old pipes that we have to contend with. So this image is to show you the biggest culprit of urban water pollution, which is impervious surface. Baltimore City is 45% impervious overall, and downtown is close to 75% impervious. Baltimore City itself is 92 square miles. There, as I mentioned, there's a 45% tree canopy. There's 2,000 miles of roads, 450 miles of alleys, 1,146 miles of storm drain pipes, and over 14,000 vacant lots. In cities, 55% of rainwater becomes runoff versus 10% in natural environments. At the watershed level, anything above 15% impervious surfaces causes significant declines in water quality, eliminating sensitive species and significantly reducing the abundance of other species. Runoff is the #1 threat to urban streams and is the only source of water pollution that is still growing. Okay, so this illustration depicts some of the issues that affect urban water, and I'm going to give my voice a rest and let you all pick out some of the things you see in this image and put them into the chat box. Amy, if you, I'm sorry, Mary, if you would please read them off. I'll point them out with my mouse as we go over them.
Sounds good. Pooping dog, we have.
Oh, wait, here, I got a good one for that, I think. Here, did it work? Yes.
Yeah, there it goes. Anybody see anything else? Car oil.
Yes, there's car oil here, general spillage stuff.
Someone grilling, trash.
Yes, garbage. This giant hole. No, I'm just kidding. That's just a invisible.
Construction site runoff and an excavator.
Yeah, and a good tip with that. That's one that Baltimore City will jump on a bit faster than some of your other 311 tips, because there is a significant fine that these construction companies can face. So use your 311 app, download it if you don't have it yet.
Someone has noticed some plastic and trash. And let's see, lots of concrete, sidewalks and roads. Erosion, that's a good one.
That's all right here. I think we pointed out a good. I don't know if I heard the the chemical fertilizer spray here. Essentially all that is going to run out into the drain, especially if it's not planned or soon or at the right times. All right.
Bird poop.
What's that?
Bird poop was another one.
Bird poop. Oh yes, and this kind of brings up something. This brings me back to Bela, actually. When I walk her, it just makes me think, when I pick up her poop, I know it's a very important thing to do, but does anybody else wonder what the dogs think of us? I mean, it's a very uniquely human thing to do. Okay, so with that, I am going to hop over to this one. Okay, so this shows you what happens during a rainstorm in uncared for and poorly designed and outdated urban environments. And if there's any Stephen King fans out there, this is for you. All right, so why is runoff such a big deal? I'm glad you asked. It's basically a quantity and quality issue. So in terms of quantity, water enters the streams in high volume and velocity, causing erosion and unnatural variations between high and low water levels, which cuts the water off from wildlife. In quality, water carries pollutants such as fertilizer, oil, trash, sediments, and bacteria. And also in high temperature in the summer months, there's thermal pollution, which essentially when all the pavement gets heated up and you can cook an egg on it, when water hits that and just runs directly into the waterway, that hot water helps the algae bloom. And that's actually what causes a lot of that, or fish kills that happen in the summertime in our harbor, due to the depleted oxygen of the algae blooming and then dying. So again, it's important to remember that runoff is the #1 threat to our urban streams and the only source of water pollution that is still growing. So this wordy slide is showing you the impacts of stormwater pollution on urban streams. So there's fecal coliform bacteria, which is really just a nice way of saying poop. Heavy metal, so Baltimore was an industrial town and scientists were exploring how to extract heavy metals from the water, but they'll never get it out of me. Legacy pollutants, chemicals can take a long time to break down and are still part of the water. Total suspended solids, which are a runoff essentially, and nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus, essentially, and our poop is considered a nutrient under these conditions as well. So all these factors compromise our delicate ecosystem. So most trash from the Jones Falls waterway, which is our most of the trash that enters into the inner harbor, comes from the Jones Falls waterway, which is our most polluted waterway, and where Mr. Trash Wheel awaits his meals. It is not uncommon for him in 1 year to collect over 163 tons. And just to give you a picture of that, you can think of about 19 elephants coming out of his mouth afterwards. So be wary and report this type of scene whenever you see it. Gray water means there's sewage. That means there's some sort of sewage leak likely. And I would definitely call us if you see something like this. These terrifying ailments are caused by our 100-year-old failing infrastructure. Okay, so I'm done freaking you out, and I'm going to now talk about what Blue Water Baltimore is doing. So Baltimore City is an ecosystem, albeit an odd and seemingly unnatural one. But to truly understand the problems, we have to understand that the system is governed, that the systems that govern our ecosystem, and we have to understand that everything is connected. So here's an image after a lot of teamwork and public policy advocacy. If you would be so kind, some people could just share out some of the good practices they see in this picture. In the chat.
Planting trees, more trees.
And we have some tree plantings coming up that we'll tell you about later, that you can get involved in if you're interested.
Yeah, picking up dog poop, trash pickups. No pesticides on the lawn. Some erosion control.
Yes, this is also river restoration here. These are here to slow the current down, so niche environments and ecosystems can form there, or have a better chance of doing so.
Yeah, riding bikes.
There's storm drain art over here, or stencils rather, and grates. There's a few of these in some parts of the city. I think in Bolton Hill, they're experimenting with those.
Yeah, best management practices for the construction site.
Yes.
The lawnmower is non-motorized. Wow, I didn't.
Yeah, but there's still, I think, I gotta get on Photoshop. I think the artist just forgot to get rid of the gas spill. But yes, non-motorized.
A cobblestone parking lot.
So that would be considered a pervious surface, so changing the just straight up water sliding right off. This allows it to seep in. There's also a green roof here, which is kind of hard to see. I think we hit most of them. The only other things I'll point out are this, this is called a bump out right here and a flow through. So water is essentially, the storm water is going to just flow through here and slow down. Some of it will be absorbed by these plants. This is a rain garden here. But yeah, I think we got most of them. So we're going to move on. All right, so at Blue Water Baltimore, we infuse environmental learning in all aspects of our work. And this means that though we sometimes perform in a teaching role like I am right now, we just as often spend our time learning from our environment and the people and the creatures that live within it. As I mentioned, our Waterkeeper program focuses on utilizing the law to achieve cleaner water in Baltimore. We utilize citizen enforcement to abate pollution through field work and citizen action. Waterkeepers are part of an international organization. There are waterkeepers everywhere, and Blue Water Baltimore is home of our Inner Harbor waterkeeper, which is Alice, who is right here in this picture. Our waterkeeper team goes out every Wednesday to collect data. all of which gets uploaded to our Baltimore Water Watch webpage, which you can find right in the ribbon of our homepage of our website. And since we can't do everything, we do rely on volunteers to help with pollution monitoring. We also work to install green stormwater infrastructure in the city. These are bump outs that were put in near Butcher's Hill. And the point of green stormwater infrastructure is essentially to mimic the water cycle of a healthy forest as much as possible. And these are rain gardens and bioretention systems at Amazing Grace Church. And I believe that we worked on plans, or we were part of getting plans together for your congregation as well. We partner with Tree Baltimore to increase our tree canopy. As I mentioned, Baltimore City has about a 40% tree canopy, but inner city neighborhoods, that's closer to 5. And then, it's important to note that a single mature tree can absorb up to 100 gallons of water during a large rainstorm, along with the pollutants that come with it. All right, and now I'm going to kind of jump into some of the ways that you can help. So I've mainly been talking about urban runoff and infrastructure issues, but conservation is also important. And this graph is based off of UN statistics. On a personal level, you should do all you can to conserve water, but our fight is much bigger when it comes to water conservation. And it's important to keep water forefront in your mind. I feel it's important to keep it forefront in your mind through conservation, but don't think that's enough. So if taking a shorter shower is untenable to you and it will make you a miserable person, consider your dietary choices, food miles, packaging, purchase power, to help drive down the use of fresh drinkable water in agriculture and industry. As you can see, domestic use is the lower of these. And as I'm sure you all know, bottled water is more often than not just heavily branded tap water, and it's, as a private commodity, it's actually regulated far less than our tap water is. So if you'd like to get your hands dirty, we have stuff for you. These are all pre-pandemic pictures. Obviously, I kept them there because I like looking at them. But we typically have no shortage of opportunities for you to engage in, and we do have some on our calendar. I will be sending through David or Martha an email that'll have some of the information as to how you can get involved. So we used to do storm drain art stenciling, but we paused that, and that's been on pause for about a year now. But we do still encourage people to go out and chalk their storm drains with students or kids. It's a lot of fun. And we do occasionally offer storm drain chalking talks about sort of best practices of going out and doing that, staying safe, and things along those lines. You can redirect your downspout. So harvesting the rainwater that falls on your property. You can install a rain barrel, which we do have at Herring Run Nursery. We don't usually get many of them, so get there quick. Mary, correct me if I'm wrong. And we also help get those installed on large buildings and congregations, except cisterns rather than rain barrels. You can also look into planting a rain garden. We in Baltimore City Master Gardeners are here to help. And of course, you can pick up all your native plants for all your gardening needs at Herring Run Nursery, and you can volunteer there too. And in fact, Mary, if you want to talk about the volunteer training that is happening in the next week or so, feel free.
Yeah, so let's see, I'm not muted. Okay, good. On March 10th, which is a week from today, we have our virtual volunteer training. We have 6 spots left in that. It's a 2-part training. The first part is virtual. We'll just give you an overview of what we expect from our volunteers and what you can expect when you come to volunteer. And then it's followed by Saturday morning. We'll have you out to the nursery so you can see the space and see what we're working with. Our opening day is March 18th this year. We're going to be open by appointment only, so you need to schedule your shopping appointment on our website at bluewaterbaltimore.org/events. And masks are required when you come to shop, and we sanitize carts between uses. And lastly, we're going to have a Green Thumb trivia event on St. Patrick's Day, which is March 17th And that's just it's free to attend, donations are welcome, but just test your knowledge about native plants and other green trivia. I'll be the host of that. And that's pretty much it for the nursery.
All right, thank you. And oh, these are those pictures. These are nice. There's a full picture of the nursery there. This is, keep your eye out for this when you're driving on the road so that you can catch it. It can be easy to miss, although there isn't that many turnoffs other than the nursery there. And that is our pollinator garden demonstration.
May I just say one more thing? Just about the pollinator garden, we do have, we call them educational way stations. So if you're interested in native plants and have heard about native plants, but have no idea how you could use them on your property, we have a few educational gardens set up to provide some examples for homeowners.
Great. All right, and then you can engage in democracy. So I wanted to mention a couple things, and I'm also we have I think 2 more slides here, and then I'm going to screen share my just web browser so that you can see some of the legislative priorities that we're working on, and I'll also send you a link for all that. But I did want to make one note that on March 24th at 10 a.m., Baltimore City is hosting a testimony hearing about sewage backups in people's homes, and basically it's about expediting the reimbursement program. So again, you'll get an email with some of this information. If you're interested in, offering testimony or supporting that effort, you'll be, I'll get you the information on how to go about doing that. And then the other thing that you can do is help educate. So absolutely nothing should go down a toilet except for the stuff that comes out of you and toilet paper. And even if it says flushable on it, it's not really flushable. There's no regulating body to determine if something is flushable or not, and technically almost anything can be flushed. No fats, oils, and grease, that's called fog, should go down the drain, and because those help grow giant fat birds, which are monstrous clogs that threaten our safety. And if you don't have the interest or capacity to do any of those things I spoke of, we'll gladly accept your donations and do that work on your behalf. So with that, I want to say thank you. And I like this little cartoon here because, well, I love Calvin and Hobbes, but I put it here just as a note to remember that it's really important to have fun saving your corner of the world. We live in very, very strange times, and we largely live very much out of step with the natural world, and water is delivered to us through very utilitarian instruments like chrome faucets and porcelain thrones, and that makes us take the life-giving properties of water for granted. But the true nature of water is mysterious and strange, and I just really encourage people to embrace that as you go about it and go about saving your corner of the world. So with that, I'm going to stop my screen share for a minute. All right, now, as I said, I will share some websites that you can go to. I'll put them in the chat rather than bother talking about them now. And I'm just open to taking questions. I could not see my face or anyone's faces during this presentation. These are always getting weirder and weirder only because of how quiet they are. Usually I'm interacting with humans, so it's a little different. Not that you're not humans, I know you're humans. So anyway, I'm happy to take questions. Mary, if you have any you want to digest, and then maybe we'll just kind of open it up or digest into one or a couple.
Sure, yeah, I'll let you know what comes into the chat box. One thing was that Meatless Monday is a great way to cut back on your meat intake when you were talking about the agriculture being such a large part of water consumption.
Oh, yes. And also, how many, well, we can either do this, if there's a lot of questions in the chat, because I haven't looked at it, we can go about it this way, or we can just, I'm fine if people want to unmute and we can just try to, navigate this. I think I can see everybody on one page, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? Yeah, okay. Then we don't have to be so formal about that.
This isn't a question, it's a comment. But cosmic water is, I think, one of the coolest things I've heard in a long time. My mind is blown.
Yeah, it is pretty neat. Thank you. I'm glad that I hope that it was cosmic water. I really do. That's what I'm rooting for.
Let's see.
Michelle, can you talk about Baltimore City's plans for redoing the water under the streets infrastructure, both the supply and the sewers and stormwaters? Where do we stand with that? I know there's various federal regulations that
Sure.
complied with.
So in 2016, the city was put under the consent decree by the EPA at the time for essentially not, or I'm sorry, the city had been under a consent decree for a long period of time in order to basically imposing on the city that the system be advanced. In 2016, it was the time that it lapsed because it was all supposed to be finished by that time. It wasn't. At the time, it was still moving very slowly. It has picked up quite a bit, but real quick, in 2016, Blue Water Baltimore did petition and we did successfully become a party to the consent decree. So now we do have some influence as to, testing the practices that the city puts into place to make sure that they are scientifically sound and that they're producing the results that the money is allocated for them to do. Prior to there's a lot of stormwater fees associated with our water bills. It's all going towards this. And you'll see a lot of that in action now. I mean, if you go down Falls Road, they're tearing up the road, they're putting in new piping there. They're mainly trying to replace the crumbling pipes that are there and also increase the capacity, because the pipes that were put in, no one envisioned a city as big as it is with the population that is here. So in terms of the supply, we don't really focus too much on the supply, but I will say that what we do know is that our supply lines are quite good. And the fact that water is pressurized, in case you didn't know this, is that nothing can really get into those pipes, the delivery system. So if there is a break, the water shoots out. So nothing is able to get into that system as it's between you and the water treatment plant. They are doing a very big project at Druid Hill Park. I'm not too versed in that. We might be doing some education around it in the future, but it hasn't really been on our radar. We mostly focus on the streams and how they're affected by stormwater and the infrastructure issues. But we are gaining pace. There was a time back when I was showing those pictures of those sinkholes were 2012, 2015. At that time, the Baltimore Sun reported we were only doing 14 miles of pipes a year of the 4,000 that need to be replaced. So you could do the math on what that would mean. It has definitely picked up and things are going better. And I think that we were lucky enough to be on the transition team for the new mayor, and that was a really wonderful opportunity for us, so that we actually have are able to have a direct contact with the mayor, and that's a rather new development for us. So I'd say that our relationship with the city is strange bedfellows, right? I mean, we're there to kind of keep the feet to the fire, make sure that they're doing the right thing, but we partner all the time and we work well together.
Michelle,
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions in the chat box. One person, Evelyn, says that she's in Howard County. Is there a Patapsco water group with river walks in my area to clean our streams?
Well, Howard County does have, it was Howard County, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they do have a very robust watershed program, but I'm not really positive on it. But I'm sure if you looked it up in the Howard County government page, you'd find it. I have spoken to some people that work there. So I think they even had some, well, this is a while ago, but they had some like free rain barrel programs in certain neighborhoods in Howard County as well.
I think also,
well, I was just going to say, I'm not sure. We are looking to offer walks in Baltimore area in the spring, and we're actually going to we're talking about tailoring most of our programs to being outdoors and nature walks and things like that, because we all want to be outside and around people once we can be. So that's kind of one of our goals. I'm not really sure what Howard County is offering, unfortunately, for the in terms of educational programming, though.
Great. And Evelyn, it looks like Hope put something in the chat box, a link to some more information about Howard County. And Christopher also asked if grasslands are something to be planted in the harbor.
Well, there are projects like that at the Inner Harbor, and those kinds of things are very, I would consider those green infrastructure projects as well. Doing things like that, you're essentially trying to mirror the water cycle as much as possible. Obviously, with all of the various contaminants in our waterway, those types of, you have to be far more selective of the types of species. They have to be very bacteria tolerant and things like that, and pollution tolerant. But I think the aquarium has done some of that, if I'm not mistaken. They are really interesting potentials that exist in terms of green infrastructure that could be utilized. We have not been involved in any of those. There's a lot of that happening on the Eastern Shore, more so than around here. But it would be pretty awesome to see the Inner Harbor with floating wetlands all over the place. I think that would be rad.
Another question. In our area, I am seeing lots of black pipe from properties into small streams with increasing erosion on those small streams. Are there any regulations to prevent homeowners from doing that?
Well, I'm not really sure what the black pipes you're referring to are. So, a lot of, if it could be, I'm not sure if it's city infrastructure or what exactly you're seeing there. But in terms of the city infrastructure, there isn't any filtration when it comes to, the storm drains that you see on the side of the road. They're just flowing, directly into the waterway right there. But yeah, I don't really know what the black pipes are, so I'm not really sure how to comment on it. Sorry. Oh, runoff from driveways. I wouldn't think so, because, well, frankly, all runoff from driveways is going into the stream as it is. That's how water is managed in urban environments. So, but yeah, I don't really know about the specific situation with that. Grills at the bottom of the driveway. Yeah, I think so. A lot of those, I think, are designed to kind of tap into the storm drain system itself, from what I understand, I think. But I don't think that there's going to be much regulation. If it's just pushing water from the impervious surface of the driveway to a nearby waterway, I don't think that there's probably any regulation around that, unfortunately, perhaps.
Yeah, another person would like you to comment on the idea that how discouraging it is that too many people are not engaged in environmental concern, that most people feel that it's someone else's problem and they've been doing something the way they've been doing it for so long that it's fine to keep doing it. So if you could comment on sort of that mentality and what we can do to change it.
Ever perplexing questions, right? Or how to engage with people. So, I've found the best way to do that is, I try to be funny and lighthearted in the delivery of the stuff that, I share. I think being as least confrontational as possible is likely going to be your best bet. And I have also found that a lot of the times, if you do your homework and you have a better understanding as to kind of what's happening, and you can frame it and phrase it in such a way that is sort of 1, 2, 3 sensical, I have found that it helps with those kinds of scenarios, and also just kind of explaining things from a perspective that perhaps people haven't thought of it before. So some of the things that I've offered in this presentation are sort of talking about the wider importance of water and things like that, to try to, help get to the well, you know, the feelings of people, so that they have I really believe that it's important to get people near the water and by the waterways and exploring them, and really the best that we can do is get people really interested in nature, as far as I can tell. If people are in that zone and they're not really seeing it, it's really getting them to fall in love with nature in some way and focusing on that relationship, because that it'll carry it after. You know, so we're really, you know, Blue Water Baltimore, we speak to that group as well. We try to, you know, all that audience as well. But we also are very much, you know, those that are ready to be involved and do some of this advocacy work. You know, we're ready for that too. So, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a bit of a meandering way of an answer, but maybe it's a bit of insight, since I do it all the time, I guess.
Michelle, can you talk about the Baltimore area sewage treatment plants? How many are there?
Sure.
And what kind of quality of water do they put into the bay and tributaries once the processing is done?
Yeah, so there's two treatment plants. One is going through a big renovation right now, which you could probably read about. I'm sure, I know it's archived in, you know, online. You can find the Sun articles about it. But there's a couple mile long, just kind of stagnant sewage river underneath the city. Beautiful image, right? Just kind of creeping its way over to the one of the treatment plants due to a just an engineering. I don't know. I don't. You know, these were built a long time ago. It was either a mishap or maybe just a bad idea. I'm not really sure how it came about. But essentially, the sewage has to rise to a certain level to get into the treatment plant. That is being worked on, and that will, when that is fixed, a lot of the sewage backup problems that people do experience that live near these areas will hopefully cease. I mean, because that is a big cause of it. I will say that we do collect water in the Inner Harbor in our boat right at a spot. I mean, where we rest the boat on sort of the billowing of water that is coming out of the out of the treatment plant there on the harbor, and we take samples from that every week. And you know, we have to say that it's actually, they do quite a good job of getting all the things out that need to get out of there. So the sample rate of that area is not vastly different than the ones that we're getting anywhere else. So yeah, it looks like the processes are working. At the same time, you know, I'd say all that stuff I was saying earlier about be sure what you flush or what goes down a drain, because, you know, essentially all that stuff is either going to create a clog, or at the end it's going to get filtered out and, you know, incinerated anyway. So, you know, the chances of it creating a clog and bigger problems are just keep the stuff out of there, you know, because it's going to go into that incinerator no matter what, if it does go down the toilet when it's filtered out. Yes, definitely. Flushing medications is a big issue, and it's actually a growing issue now. I think we actually, yeah, there's some things that we're learning about that regularly, and it's a growing problem that I need to just add into a slide here, actually. Any other questions? And feel free to unmute if you like. All right. Turning in meds. I'm not entirely sure about that. That is a very good question, and I will gladly look into that, because that is something that we should know. Mary, do you know? Doctors' offices, mayhaps, pharmacies?
I know that at least I'm in Howard County, and I think like twice a year they, at the fire station and police stations, they have like days that you can drop off old medications.
Yeah, I know they do that with certain chemicals, like household chemicals and stuff like that in Baltimore City. Harbor Hospital Pharmacy had one. Oh, as in a drop-off point. And we actually have a big project at Harbor Hospital, so go check it out if you go there. Big Harbor Hospital is right on the, harbor, and we did a lot of work on their parking lot there. Oh, okay. I can't see that full question. Mary, do you want to?
Sure. Bill asked, or says, there doesn't seem to be much incentive for people to manage water falling on their property. Do you have any ideas about that?
Yeah, we have been in conversations with the city because there are some, tax incentives that were there, but they're pretty low. And that is another topic that we've been in conversation with them about, and we would hope that we can increase that. So we would have more people interested in that topic. I mean, I think I would also say that as important as collecting that rainwater would be, I really think that a lot of the effort that we have to do is more so in the advocacy arena, because it's kind of back to that picture of what I was showing you about the 8%, that was water usage, right, of 8% domestic. But really, when it comes down to it, collecting, having a rain barrel is going to help the situation, no doubt about that. But the situation needs more help than that, really. So in terms of like the efforts, I would be putting them more into the advocacy space. And then in terms of rain garden, doing some of these practices at your home, they are that way that you kind of have that a deeper relationship with water, as we were talking about, or as I was talking about earlier, as well as, trying your best to do your part to, utilize that water and not just shuck it off your property. So yeah, I'd say focusing on advocacy, but then again, it's kind of really down to just kind of, I'd say, getting people interested in why they would want to do that. Because there aren't that many incentives in the, scheme of things on that side of things, if that makes sense.
I think also, if I don't think it's in Baltimore, but in Howard County and I believe Anne Arundel County, there are some like rain garden reimbursement programs or programs where you can be reimbursed if you're doing.
Howard County, I think, has one of those.
Yeah, so something to advocate for something like that within Baltimore would be pretty cool.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it's really going to be about something like that. It's still going to be advocacy related, like, hey, make an incentive here. We want people to do it, right? So it's going to start with that part.
Michelle and Mary, thank you so much. I'm just mindful of people's time and energy, and we're hearing from some folks their tummies, they're wanting to go to their dinner. So I know Hope might have some final words, and then maybe Michelle and Mary, if y'all are willing, if there are folks that want to hang on to the call, then maybe you've got another few minutes. But
sure, that's fine.
Great. So Hope.
Thanks, David, and thanks, Michelle and Mary, for your time this evening. That was a great presentation. I've just gone ahead and put a link in the Zoom chat to a Google Doc that has some calls to action, if you will. So if any of you were with us last week when we had the presentation, it was kind of a Climate Change 101 presentation from Sea Change. This call to action follows a very similar format, and the idea is that any of us could take a look at the 3 items that we have on this list and feel that, there's something that we can go do in our lives to take some kind of meaningful action to help the environment. So I'll just be super brief and kind of running through the items that are on this list, because like David said, we want to be mindful of your time. So the first call to action, let me actually pull up the correct page, is to get involved with local organizations that are dedicated to protecting the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So on this list, I have Blue Water Baltimore and then the Healthy Harbor Initiative. So like Michelle mentioned, the trash wheel, there's actually now a family of trash wheels that are in the harbor. Those are kind of a downstream solution, but they've kind of become icons within Baltimore. And I know I personally am a fan of the trash wheel, and I have a trash wheel face mask. And I have a trash wheel sweatshirt, so I think it's kind of a nice thing for people to rally around. And that trash wheel family is sponsored and run by the Healthy Harbor Initiative, which is another organization in Baltimore that is working on education and outreach. And they particularly focus on doing oyster restoration in the Chesapeake Bay. And so there are just some links here to connect to both Blue Water Baltimore and the Healthy Harbor Initiative, and get involved with volunteer opportunities and sign up for their newsletters. And there are also ways to donate to both organizations on those websites. The second action here is to explore energy savings opportunities through BG&E. So Maryland is a little bit unique in that it's a deregulated energy market, which means that BG&E might not necessarily be your provider, but chances are they are your provider. And they actually have a lot of really great programs that are low and no cost for customers to explore energy efficiency opportunities in their homes. And some of them are completely free, and BG&E will actually come to your house and install low flow water fixtures, for example, to help you conserve your water consumption, or trying to think of other things they've done. Low flow shower heads. I believe they also have a program to give you like energy saving power strips. So they have a lot of rebates and incentives available to customers throughout Maryland that could be a great opportunity for you to take some action in your own space to help you reduce your environmental footprint. And the last item I have on this list is learning about community solar and considering subscribing to a local program. So 20 states in DC, including Maryland, now have community solar legislation. And that's the idea that basically on a piece of land, or sometimes on a large building, there is a large solar array that people in the community can tap into, and they can kind of subscribe to the grid. And it gives people an opportunity to access green power without having to install any infrastructure on their own property. So I know through BG&E, Neighborhood Sun, which is an organization that is linked in this list, they allow customers to connect to Neighborhood Sun's solar grids throughout Maryland. And you can just do that through a contract directly with BG&E. So you don't even have to change providers for your energy. The other two organizations on this list are Grid Alternatives, which is a nonprofit that advocates for environmental and economic justice through renewable energy and community-centered solutions. And they have a great newsletter that you can subscribe to learn more about kind of the energy justice movement and thinking about how a transition to clean energy can be equitable for everyone. And then the last link that I have here is to Power 52, which you might guess, 52, what does that number mean in Baltimore? Ray Lewis, you're correct. Ray Lewis founded this solar organization in partnership with some other leaders in Baltimore. And the idea is that they're doing workforce development for kind of a green economy. And I believe they also have some community solar projects in Baltimore as well. So it's just really an opportunity to kind of learn more about different green energy projects that are happening right in our backyard, and to consider how we might be able to get involved in supporting those kinds of programs. So with that, maybe some of these things speak to you, maybe they don't, and that's okay. I did have kind of one side note I was thinking of when we were talking about actions that we can take in our watershed. And somebody mentioned, are there organizations near me where I can go and get involved with trash cleanups? This may not be for everybody, but I personally do trash pickups just because I like doing trash pickups by myself and not necessarily in an organized fashion. And I find that it's nice to just get outside and walk and maybe put on a podcast or listen to some music or talk to people on the phone and pick up trash. And it's kind of a nice way to get exercise and help the planet. And it's pretty surprising. Once you start looking for trash, you see it everywhere. I've done trash pickups near where I live now in Falls Church, and within a mile, not even, picked up 20 pounds of trash. And so there are a lot of opportunities, even if they're not presented to you in kind of an organized fashion that, you know, you might be able to find little ways that you can start making a difference in your community. So I'll leave you all with that.
I'd like to just tag on that, because I think that was a great comment. One of the things that I do is, you know, poop bags, back to that poop bag, right? When you're picking it up, it's a rather large bag. You saw that dog, it's very small. I don't know about all the dogs, but what I do is whenever I'm walking my dog and I have one of those bags, I load it with stuff on my way back. So it's just kind of like building in little habits like that, you know, are really helpful. So that's just one of the things that I tend to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure.
Great. Gosh, well, thank you so much, Michelle and Mary and Hope. What a really helpful evening. You've given us ways to make a difference, as well as an incredible education about water in our area. I loved it too. Cosmic water all the way to our own water garden. So thank you for all that. And thank you to Martha for creating this opportunity, and everyone on Caring for Creation. But Martha was the matchmaker and introduced us to Michelle. So great to have this relationship. And for those of you who haven't been in our new parking lot, Blue Water Baltimore is really why we have this, and Martha and Caring for Creation is why we have this new parking lot, which vastly improves the runoff from that very large space over on Melrose. So,
well, and our next engagement, which I can't remember the date. I don't know if you remember the date. Is it March 31st?
it's 3 weeks, whatever 3 weeks is.
Well, anyway, Jean Malott, who is really the resident, water expert on the Redeemer property, is going to be giving a really nice overview, along with the designer Nick Lindau, of, you'll see very up close and with a lot of detail what went into the planning of that parking lot. And I think she'll talk about some of the other areas that capture water on the property. It all started with the Blue Water Baltimore water audit back many years ago. So we've done a lot. So I think, clearly the parking lot's our biggest project, and it looks beautiful, but you come to the next one and you can learn more about what we're doing at Redeemer.
Great. Well, thank you all.
Thank you all. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, I guess that's
Thank
it.
you so much, Michelle. Excellent.
All right.
You are funny and a great teacher.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
Yeah, usually it's hard nowadays. You can't, well, you do this, you right now. I mean, because you do sermons, right? So it's
right.
I can't read the room. I can't hear anybody. So I'm like, I don't know if these are landing, but I'm just gonna keep going.
No. It was very, very strong. So
Okay.
yeah, it's great. It's great.
All right.
And look forward to continue relationship.
Yeah, great. Well, you have a good evening.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.